Right, my pals, how's your Monday? I'm just kicking back since my son's out playing in this nice weather, so I have a bit of free time to do this video. I wasn't on the weekend in that, obviously. I think I'd explained how I had some family stuff going on, but it's resolved and just wait for the next time. But the video that I wanted to come on and talk about just now was about a guy called James Whitey Bulger. Now, for some of you maybe that have never heard of a guy called Whitey Bulger, he was an Irish organised crime figure in Boston, Massachusetts. I think he was born in the 20s, the late 20s maybe, um, and was an absolute bona fide criminal growing up in the early years of his life, like since almost he was old enough to walk. And the reason that I wanted to come on and talk about his case was because there has been a lot of stuff in the media about Whitey Bulger um, and his relationship with the FBI. And obviously, there's a lot of people who say that relationship with the FBI was a reciprocal relationship. It was transactional. He was given information in exchange for carte blanche, um, freedom to operate. Now, obviously, I hadn't even heard of Whitey Bulger until I was like maybe in my 20s, and to be honest, I didn't really find it that interesting of a case at the time, but that was because I was too busy looking into other stuff, and that kind of happens with me. Sometimes I'll get interested in a certain case, and there'll be other cases that maybe I'm like, that would be interesting, but I never look at it, and then years later, once I've did a bit of reading or whatever, then I'll look into it. But I would say that so Whitey Bulger went to Alcatraz in the 19 so Alcatraz was closed in 1963, so it must have been the 50s. I'm just saying that because sometimes I don't remember exact dates in relation to some crimes, but Whitey Bulger definitely did spend a period of time in Alcatraz, and this was when the American federal government were carrying out research into like mind control. There was a name for this project which escapes me, which I'm embarrassed to say because I love reading about this stuff. And basically, what they were doing was feeding them, like paying prisoners with chocolate or money or whatever they were giving them, incentivizing an unethical scientific experiment. Um, and basically seeing how many acid they could take and what they reacted to and what maybe they had a certain reaction to, and just basically mind fucking. Do you know what I mean? And I dare no, and speaking as somebody who the only time I had ever tried acid was in prison. That was given to me by somebody knowingly. And I would say never again. But to be taking it continuously and probed and analysed and all that, that would have an effect on the mind of anybody, let alone a psychopath like Whitey Bulger. But when he got out of prison, there was all these kind of gangs vying for control in Boston. There was a couple other Irish gangs, as well as the Boston Italian organised crime, which I believe is part of the Patriarcha family. And the guy who was like running Boston for the Italians back then was a guy, Gennaro Angiolo, which his nickname was Jerry because obviously some names they westernise it, so that obviously It's a bit more palatable. And one of the things that I've noticed about the Whitey Bulger case was this guy was an absolute Machiavellian tactician. And I believe that one of the reasons that it helped enable his criminal behaviour, his psychopathy, was the fact that the guy who was his FBI handler was actually a childhood friend. So you've got these two people from the same neighbourhood, the same housing estate, the same scheme, who find themselves on opposite ends of the law, but both want the same objective. Now, the guy who was Whitey Bulger's FBI handler was a guy by the name of John Connolly, right? And John Connolly in the 1970s, as a federal agent in Boston, was, I would say, very, very keen to be the face of the gang that took down the mafia in Boston, because the RICO law was actually written in the 60s, I believe, or 1970, by a guy, G. Robert Blakey, and he's a professor at, is it Harvard or Princeton? He's fucking up there anyway, right? More degrees than a thermometer. And he wrote this law called the RICO Act, Racketeers Influence Corrupt Organisations. It's basically an organised crime law, right? But there has to be certain rules that are prerequisites that they have to meet in order to be able to charge somebody with RICO. So basically, an example would be if they could prove that, say, you were laundering money, as well as, say, you had committed a certain murder, which they would say these acts were committed. These are the two predicate acts that we need to prove the existence of a criminal enterprise, meaning a business that's set up to make money through illegal activity. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that John Connolly, the FBI agent who grew up with Whitey Bulger and his brothers in South Boston, was basically signed a pact with the devil, because there is this kind of atmosphere in a lot of places, not just in Boston, where if you're involved in any sort of organised crime, obviously talking to the authorities in any way, shape or form is punishable by death or banishment, kneecapping, whatever. But this John Connolly seems to have twisted this logic, whereas he would never rat or snitch on Whitey Bulger, but he's an FBI agent taking down the Italians. Like, this is what we mean by double standards. Like, to me, there is nothing worse than somebody being the complete antithesis of what they propose to be. So somebody who fights monsters becoming an absolute monster, like a cop who's out to clean the streets, but he's causing more damage than criminals. To me, that's just frightening. Somebody with a badge and power and authority that could basically choke you on a chicken nugget and make it look like a suicide. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, Whitey Bulger had been approached by other law enforcement agencies that weren't FBI, and I think they were catching on to the fact that John Connolly or somebody in the FBI office had apparently been doctoring 302 reports. Now, a 302 is basically, say you're working for an organised crime gang and you want to report confidential information to the FBI, it'd be called a 302 report. And I think what John Connolly was doing was falsifying these 302s, duplicating them. So say Joe Blogs told us that so-and-so was hiding a package of drugs and guns for Mr. X. So basically, that would be the confidential information. So I think he's been doctoring them and making out that Whitey Bulger was the guy giving him all this information when in fact he wasn't, right? And that kind of seems to be this kind of angle for some people that are saying Whitey Bulger, no, I don't think he was snitching and all this stuff. Well, I don't think he was snitching on the Irish either, to be honest. But in order for the FBI to be able to bug or conceal an electronic eavesdropping device in a pub, a bar, a social club, they need something called Title III authorization, right? Now, in order to bug the headquarters of the Boston Italian organised crime, Jerry Angiulo and co, where do you think they got the Title III authorization to bug that premises? It was Whitey Bulger that gave them it. So, whether he was snitching on Italians, Irish, fucking Scottish, it's still the same thing, innit? But I believe that at the end of the day, Whitey Bulger thought, like, I'm taking out my competition, fuck them, it's no snitching. I would disagree, but the funny thing is that when Whitey when Whitey gave the kind of information that led to the FBI concealing microphones in this building and listening to these Italian organised crime guys discussing business, Whitey inadvertently poked his head above the parapet. And what I mean by that is, before the Italian organised crime in Boston was decimated, like in the 80s, in the kind of Bulger times, and right, what he basically did was make his own reputation even bigger, because if the whole FBI office in Boston is focused on bringing down the Italian organised crime gangs, once they bring them down, who's next? It's like, right, so what's the job today? But the fact that John Connolly had been spending a bit more time with Whitey than was normal for a handler informant relationship was obviously ringing bells, and it's what they say, show me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. And I believe that he actually started kind of showing up to work dressed more like a fucking gangster than somebody who worked for the FBI, which could be a sign of corruption, obviously. But the irony is that one of the James Bulger, Jimmy Bulger, Whitey, whatever you want to call him, was informed by his FBI handler that they were all getting indicted for murders. I think he was charged with like 19 murders, conspiracy to murder, money laundering, conspiracy to launder money, like all RICO charges, right? So like 20. So for every charge on that indictment you get convicted for, it's like an automatic 20-25 years, right? So you're not getting it. And the thing is that Whitey was well prepared for it, because he actually became one of the most wanted fugitives in the world, and was second on the FBI 10 most wanted list for many years, and the only person that was above him on this list was Bin Laden. And the irony is, right, see when Bin Laden was tracked down and all that stuff, Whitey Bulger was captured like a month later. Now, what was the odds in that? The two FBI's most wanted fugitives, well, the cases were resolved within, the both cases were resolved in a matter of weeks. And the irony is, like, Whitey Bulger had left like traces all over Europe. Like, I believe it had been spotted in London, he had a safe deposit box there, I'd seen him here, there, everywhere. Right, so there was might have been sightings of him in Iceland, right? No the no the fucking the shop, the country. Um and know where they tracked him down. California, near LA. What beach was it? I don't know. It was some kind of nice wee seaside part of Southern California somewhere. Huntington Beach, I think it might have been. Don't quote me on that, but June 2011, they they tracked him down to this kind of apartment building, and the amount of guns and money and, know what I mean. But he'd well lived to old age. I believe he was hitting his 80s by the time they tracked him down. Um, and the whole kind of, the irony of this tale is, um, almost as soon as he went to prison, obviously high profile case, so you've got to imagine there's got to be journalists and this and that, and people want his story, all this shit. But the thing is, he'd been enabled a very long time by somebody with influence. Now, it could have been his brother. His brother, Billy, was high up in the state legislature. I believe that he also was the rector of University of Massachusetts for some time. And I believe that his brother had to resign due to admitting under oath that he'd had contact with his brother while his brother was a federal fugitive. Bit of a sticky situation, that. However, what's kind of ironic about this whole case, right, is when Whitey was convicted in 2013, he was shipped off to USP Coleman in Florida, USP United States Penitentiary, so big boy prison. And this is what's kind of a bit shifty about the US penal system. Whitey was put down for a transfer to US Penitentiary Hazelton. I think it's in Kentucky, but I'm not sure. Somewhere around there. Crazy violence, murders every few days, staff shortages, just know the kind of place you want to be doing time, especially when you're accused of being him. And the day after that he landed in Hazelton, somebody beat him to death, unrecognisable. Now remember, we're talking about an 80-something-year-old man, right? Wheelchair bound, and somebody still had a memory long enough for the 1980s to say, go and see him for me. Know what I mean? I believe that there was three prisoners that were accused of this, right? Freddie Gies, Paul Di Calogero, and a guy, Sean McKinnon. Now, Freddie Gies and Paul Di Calogero are from kind of the Boston area, and I believe that they're also serving time for organised crime charges. Apparently, from the media reports that I've saw that Freddie Gayus was convicted of the murder of an Italian organised crime uh, person from Springfield, Massachusetts. So this is the thing, these organised crime things, especially with ethnic groups in that, there's tentacles everywhere. But the the organised crime family that was affiliated with the guy who was a victim of Freddie Gayus was actually a New York crime family. It wasn't the Patriarchas who Whitey had apparently informed on. But that was just really what I kind of get at, because there's all this kind of stuff coming out like, oh, but did Whitey really rat? I mean, he didn't rat on any Irish guys. Well, does Italian guys count? He gave John Connolly the information that John Connolly took to a federal judge and was issued Title 3 authorisation to wiretap Gennaro Angiolo's fucking gang hut. So, do you know what I mean? And obviously, it caught right up to him. Apparently, his face was, they didn't know who it was when they found him. Left in a right mess. I believe his tongue might have been cut off or bitten off, maybe something like that. Didn't miss him. And actually, I read that Paul Di Calogero and Freddie Gayus had made a plea deal, so I think, because it took like 5 years to charge them for this prison murder, something like that. It took them years to even charge them with this. And I think that what they've done is they've maybe pled to get Sean McKinnon released, because I noticed that Sean McKinnon, who was the alleged lookout in this prison murder, was sentenced to time served, and that was it. When I believe it, he was charged with conspiracy to murder. Now, in my opinion, there's only two reasons that charge could be dropped, and the reason is that the two guys who done the murder have said to the prosecutor, let him go, we'll plead guilty, we're already doing life, we'll take the hit. Or he's told the federales whatever they want to know, and I don't know what one it is, to be honest with you. I just thought that was a kind of interesting segue to this case. And I don't even know what the boy who was the lookout was in prison for. I believe he was in for robbing a gun dealer or something. But Freddie Gayus especially is a heavyweight in like Boston organised crime circles. From what I understand, so some pretty heavy hitters, do you know what I mean, that are probably going to get extra lifetime sentences tacked on. But I suppose by that point it doesn't matter, especially in the American prison system. If you're never going to see the light of day and you're the guy that killed Whitey Bulger, you're the man now, know what I mean? It's like, that's what's quite distinct about America. They actually like have a really, really kind of, it just looks like the lunatics run the asylum in a lot of instances. As long as they don't get in the way of the staff, it's like, do what you want. Go and murder him. It's nothing to do with me. Fuck. Imagine living in amongst that. You know what I mean? Seen some crazy shit in jail. Never saw anybody getting murdered. That's another ball game, innit? But that was kind of the reason that I wanted to come on and talk about that, was because I see a lot of this kind of stuff. It's like people trying to rewrite the narrative, because let's be honest, right? Whitey Bulger was kicking about Boston before I was even born, right? So I'm born in the 80s, and a lot of these other kind of these, how do I put it? These tales. So like, uh, where a lot of the participants or the living witnesses are no living anymore, so they can't tell the story. So it's like the guy who's left, the last man standing, is the guy that rewrites the story. And some of us know these stories are a lot of shit because we've did the due diligence, maybe even grown up, read this, read that, read it upside down, back to front, sideways, um, fucking code, know what I mean? And can make up our own mind about it. And that's just that, like, and you'll get somebody that will maybe come on and say, but you're not from Boston, how do you know, or whatever. Then that is fine, because I could never tell anybody from Boston who lived through this what their experiences were. That's just the height of being a dick. And one thing, I would might be a dick sometimes, but I would never try and tell someone who lived through something that I was talking about how they felt about it. Do you know what I mean? Um, but you're only as good as the information in front of you as well. Do you know what I mean? And if any were interested in watching that documentary, it's called. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called something like the United States versus James Whitey Bulger. I'll try and find a link and put it in the description part, but trust me, man, I don't think some people are reading um, too much between the lines with a lot of this stuff, because it's just something. It's just like that's no. That's just somebody spinning a yarn, trying to rewrite this narrative to maybe make themselves seem a certain way, and it's just not really true. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know who would be trying to rewrite his fucking legacy. Whitey Bulgers, maybe. I don't know if maybe one of his family members commissioned that documentary, like try to help him get down as somebody that fought for his brethren and all that. When he was just all for himself, a psychopath, man. He murdered a fucking 19-year-old girl. I think she was 19, buried her in the fucking basement, pulled her teeth out and all that. Know what I mean? Best thing could have happened to him, if you ask me, man. Know what I mean? Just when you're doing things like that, mate, you're just bonkers. But I've got to leave it there. And cheers for listening. And as I said, I wasn't even going to make videos today because of the shit with my brother last night, man. He just stressful. That's what I'm going to say. But I meant to make a video about this a couple of weeks ago, but sometimes I just get caught up in other things. You know what I mean? Supposed to be going to Edinburgh tomorrow, but need to see what's happening with a couple of other things. For my training and that. And then this BBC thing on Wednesday, so we'll see how that goes. But cheers for listening to me, and I will see you all next time I'm back on. Good night, have a good night.